Welcome to the New Monks. This podcast is dedicated to those of us on the journey of evolution. Through these episodes, we will dive into the lives of individual people and discover what they have learnt and how they have handled their growth. We believe that we all have wisdom to be shared with each other and can learn from listening to each other's stories. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you feel like leaving us a review and sharing the love, that would be greatly appreciated. So this is just a heads up because, there's a lot of information that is coming to light at the moment, and through these episodes, each person is going to share a different side of that for them. Now, this isn't to say that every single thing that is shared here is going to be 100% accurate. It's just not where we are right now. It's just not the case of the unraveling and the disclosures that are being revealed to us. Obviously, things are always changing, and in one moment something can be so real and so true, and the next moment is completely shifted and changed into something else. This is the journey of evolution. This is the journey of ascension that we are going through right now. So this is just an invitation that your discernment is really, really important. As always, as usual, please take what resonates and leave the rest. Thank you. Hi, and welcome back to the New Monks podcast. Back after a short hiatus and moving house. Today I am speaking to Hayley in my new building and podcast studio, and this is a really cool conversation that we had. Hayley studied environmental education, so really we are going into detail about food, farming, the future of becoming sovereign with our food in order to become truly sovereign and free from the harms and the poisons. And we speak about her journey into that, how she discovered that, and the communities that she's traveled and been a part of and bared witness to. And just the importance of food and how that is such a pivotal part of our healing journeys. So enjoy this episode. So, welcome to the New Monks podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be in such a professional studio.
I know.
Yes, up-leveling in all ways.
I'm up-leveling now as well.
Yeah, you're quantum leaping.
So normally before we begin, I like to just take a few deep breaths, checking in, and then we can start. Just tell us how you're feeling.
I am feeling all kinds of things. I feel, just really grateful and excited to be here and to kind of be backtracking and rehashing a lot of the journey that I've been walking. I think it's always useful and helpful to do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you come from? Where are you going? Those kinds of things are always helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah, those questions are so universal.
Yeah, reflection, always wise.
Yeah, I feel like it's always really nice to reflect upon where you've been and also refining where you're going, because I think it's like the proverbial, you know, questions that some people don't even have the privilege to ask, you know. So it's like, it's very interesting and can be very profound, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So where did you come from?
Well, I came from my mama and my papa. No, I was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa. And then I went to university at Rhodes University, which is in the Eastern Cape, in Makanda, which is a beautiful little town. And yeah, I moved over to the UK earlier this year, in 2024. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of reconnecting back to my roots and paving a path that feels quite like service-led, maybe a little bit unconventional. And so here I am.
So I met you last year, right? And,
yes.
Yeah, and I feel like it was kind of in that festival, you know, the Conscious Festival in the UK circuit. But were you, like, how did you discover that scene? Were you already in South Africa? Did you already find something similar?
Yes, yeah. So when I was in South Africa, I went to a eco backpackers, and it was there that I kind of got the first wind that, you know, there were people that like to gather around fires and sing and tell stories and, you know, be a little bit more conscious about recycling and things that they were consuming, and yeah, just generally being a little bit more aware of the impact that their actions were having of the people and places around them. And it was also my supervisor for my master's degree. He was connected with an eco village in South Africa along the garden route, and yeah, I think it was that same time I went to this eco backpackers that I went to this eco village. It was like my first little road trip that I did on my own solo, and was specifically interested in them investigating communities in my master's research, and like the sort of alternative communities of people doing things a little bit differently. And then I just kind of went around to a lot of these different gatherings and festivals, and you know, generally if you go to one and you meet some people, they tell you about the next one.
It's so true.
It ripples, and it's kind of easy then to, you know, like keep finding the people who resonate with your journey, and also expand your journey in many ways as well. And so I think that was in 2021 that I first sort of discovered these like conscious connection spaces. So yeah.
So interesting, isn't it? And obviously we're here at Ansel, which is where we met as well in London.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a big topic, isn't it? The community space and
yeah, it's quite a complex one as well. You know, one thing I've observed the most about, it's not always about like the principles and the intentions that we each have, but it's the human dynamics that come up with those sort of things, you know, because it's one thing to like agree, okay, we're all here to, you know, raise our vibration, or we, you know, want to do X, Y, and Z. But sometimes that looks very different in different people's eyes. So consistently meeting each other on that path and renegotiating, I think, is the biggest challenge that most communities have.
Yeah, and I think also the communication element as well. Yeah. But so, and your master's, you told me now it was in
environmental education.
So cool. So how did you find that? I guess it's even that kind of topic, it kind of, you think you will naturally find those kind of spaces, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, my master's completely found me. I had no intentions of doing a master's and going in the direction that life has taken me on now. And it was actually during COVID, the 2020 year. I was doing my last year of my journalism degree.
Oh.
And I'd actually decided that year they were going to try something a bit different and offer like different kinds of specializations in journalism. And I was always quite interested in health journalism. And particularly at the end of 2019, I found out that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it's so common nowadays. Like, I think the statistic when I was doing my research was 1 in 10 women will have PCOS. And I think it's even gone up since then. And so it's quite common, and it's linked to, like so many different health factors. And because of COVID, we couldn't actually go and interview people. We were really limited and restricted with our journalism capacities at that point. And so we kind of had to get a little bit creative with the things that we were doing and researching from our home and from, wherever we were. And I was lucky enough to be in Johannesburg with my brother and my mom. And we've got like this big, massive garden where we grew up with horses. And so it was like the perfect opportunity to finally start a vegetable patch. And I decided, like, the big reason I wanted to start the vegetable patch was the more I sort of researched health-wise polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's like there's so many like hormonal disruptors in our environment. And a big one is the pesticides that get sprayed on all our food. So I was like, well, I'm going to make my own vegetable patch, and then I know exactly what is going into that food. And sort of from there, it just really took me on to this environmental route. And I started to see like the interconnections with health, environment, community, because it'd never been framed that way before. Like,
so true.
I was never really a big environmental sort of person. Like, obviously I cared about the environment and I love nature, but the last couple of years have really taken me on a largely like deeper understanding of nature and our interconnectedness to it.
Yeah.
So
it's so true actually. I think I also never really heard about it in that way, or just really holistic, I guess, that word, that buzzword. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually where Holistically Digestible, the Instagram page that I now have, comes from. It was all about making like a lot of this content that we consume around like, pesticides and endocrine disruptors. And, if you like go and start doing the research, you can sometimes get a little bit heady and like words are not really accessible. So then Holistically Digestible was about like making it a little bit more easy to understand and to connect to. And so I think that's definitely where we're needing to move our thinking is, holistic thinking. We're done with the days of silo departments, like completely disconnecting from the bigger picture.
So I'm interested in the PCO, is that what it is?
PCOS,
PCOS. Because one time on the journey of figuring out what was going on with me, I had this scan and they said, oh, it looks like a polycystic, is it?
Yeah, polycystic.
Ovary, but it's not.
Okay.
It was really interesting. And I was like, what does that even mean? Then they said, no, don't worry, like, you're good. But anyway, then I was like, oh, what is this thing? And So how was that journey for you, discovering it? And
well, so basically I decided to come off the birth control pill. Like, I had one of my most difficult years in second year of university, and then it was only my third year that like I really started to change things around. Like, I mean, typical university days was consuming way too much alcohol and kind of was on the birth control pill, and like maybe not even eating as healthy, and like all of those kinds of things. And I used to go through like real sort of deep, almost like, I don't want to call it depression, but in a way like these, really sort of like sad, heavy sort of moments. Didn't feel like getting out of bed, and then, like I'd pick up and down, and was really just on a roller coaster with my emotions, and didn't even have like much capacity to even talk about my emotions. Like if I cried, I was at the stage of like literally apologizing, like, I'm so sorry, like, like I was a burden to people. And so then I decided I was going to stop the birth control pill, was going to stop drinking so much, and like really kind of just really focus back on to like my health and my well-being. And
is that because of these that you were noticing, the waves?
Yeah, so to some extent, I don't know, I just felt like
okay.
like I needed to stop with the birth control pill, and I needed to like fully connect back to my own rhythms, you know, essentially. Yeah. And then it was through stopping the birth control pill that my period was a little bit irregular, and then I had 1 month where like I wasn't, like my bleed wasn't coming.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like pregnant, and like pregnancy test, like was really like worried and all the rest. And then I ended up going to the gynecologist, and then he like did a little scan, like they do like an ultrasound over the ovaries, and then they can see like what's happening. And then he says, yeah, you've got polycystic ovaries, and the only thing that he could really recommend for like the cure or like healing me was the birth control pill.
Wow.
And I was like, I've just come off the birth control pill and now you want to put me back on, like that doesn't make sense. And yeah, because he says, you know, like, I mean, you get quite a few different kinds of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So one can be like you have too much testosterone, one can be you're not producing enough progesterone, the other can be you have too much estrogen. So it's quite a complex kind of like disease in all actuality. And so the main thing that I was struggling with was I wasn't producing enough progesterone. And progesterone is what actually helps to digest the outer shell in the egg in your ovary.
Wow.
So when you don't have enough progesterone, that little outer shell stays inside the ovary, and then over time that mass like starts to accumulate and stick inside of that ovary, like clogging it up and making it like really painful when you bleed, when you ovulate, like there's quite a few different things. And then obviously that causes whack with a bunch of your other hormones as well. And so
what did you do?
So I was like, man, I'm not going back on the birth control pill. And he was like, the other thing is you can also then just take this pill that will help you with the progesterone. And I was just like, nope, sorry. And by that point, I was like pretty much on my healing journey. You know, I was keen to go the holistic route, really coming to like understand the gut and heal all of the things.
So interesting. So, but before this,
yes.
It's so fascinating because there was obviously, like you said, there was a calling, something that was saying, stop, go, come back to the nature, really. And then it's just also, I had a very similar thing. The doctor had something that was going on, and then he says something, and he doesn't, it's very clear they didn't know what they were talking about.
Well, you know, that's so scary because like doctors do not do anything with nutrition.
I know.
And like,
exactly.
If every single cell in your body is made from the food that you're eating, why is more doctors not learning about nutrition?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? It's sus.
It's super sus. Like,
but one of my friends, Snuff, I interviewed him on the podcast, and he says colonization starts in the colon. I know.
Yeah,
I know, right?
That's real.
So good.
Wow.
So
it does.
Did you know? So basically, you left the office and you were just like, no. You knew you had to go past.
So I mean, the other thing, he was like, you can like stop eating less starchy food and like look at your lifestyle, whatever. And then I basically actually bought this book. It was like how to treat PCOS through diet and natural ways. And that was where in the book it spoke a lot about like the sort of endocrine disruptors. And it said like environmental toxins are a big taxing thing that our bodies have to process every single day. You know, when you're in air that's not very clean, your liver is doing all the detoxing. And when you are eating foods that are laden with heavy metals and pesticides and things like that, again, your liver and like all of those sort of organs are taking the brunt and the blow, and that then makes them less effective to do the other jobs that, you know, they also need to do. And then, so that was my health journalism project, was like, okay, focusing on hormones. And I was like, I'm going to like heal myself, you know. And I'm not on the birth control pill. My bleed is really healthy, it's vibrant, it's not so painful. Every now and again I do have painful periods, and it's super interesting because it tells me so much about what I've done that previous cycle, maybe where I've like not really been eating the right foods, or you know what I mean, like I've come so much more into connection with what my body is signaling to me.
It's so interesting.
So yeah.
So I definitely resonate with your journey, and also just that thing about the food and how important it is, and all the poisons that our body has to overload, it's overloaded with, and it's everyone, like nobody is exempt from that, you know.
No, it's everywhere.
But basically, how do you feel about? Because I don't know if you've heard this like other thought stream that is coming about food, and because a lot of people change the diet, and it's like, what does healing really mean, you know? Because some people think, oh, you should be able to eat whatever you want, you know what I mean? But then also in a way that doesn't really make sense, and also why would you do that, especially if you know it's got whatever pesticide on it, and you know, why would you choose that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting your friend says, colonization happened in the colon, because I think largely it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. So, you can also be eating all of these healthy foods, taking vitamins, but if your colon and your intestines aren't actually absorbing all of those nutrients, you're not getting the benefits of it. Yeah. So that's also like where...
Yeah, there's confusion there.
Yeah, it's not always just about food. Yeah. And it's, it's also, what is the state that you're eating your food in? That's going to play a huge thing on your digestion. Well, and the other big aspect that I think is really important is how that food is grown. The process that it then goes through from the moment it's a seed to it's on a shelf now, or whatever the case is, know. And so, it's such a complex...
It's intricate.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing, I think, people use sweeping statements and they say like, oh, like, vegan isn't good because I know so many vegans and this happens, but it's like, just like you said, so many things come into it. It's like, yeah, but, have they detoxed? Is their body functioning properly? Like, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Also, what kind of food were they eating? Just because it's like one blanket statement doesn't mean they were eating health.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is we've got to move away from thinking that there is one perfect way to eat a diet, or this or the other, because
100%
we are
agree.
bio-individual humans, and like with such rich, diverse ecologies.
Love that.
And like we're gonna interact with our environment so differently based on what is happening on the inside.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And so that's what I think healing really is. It's really coming into connection with what the inner outer sort of like conversation is consistently having. It's like knowing yourself, knowing your true north, your like the sensing self, how do you sense, what are you sensing, and are you able to decipher what you're sensing from maybe anxiety and thoughts that aren't true, and from that, then is the outside world signaling something to me, or am I then projecting something into the outside world and creating some kind of external event that maybe isn't as big, or whatever the case is. And so it's a continuous conversation, so it's not an end destination of, oh, now I'm healed. It's just a way of living, essentially.
Yeah, totally. I just find it really interesting because, I know so many people say, like, when you fully heal, then you can, like, then you get to a point where you eat what you want. But at the same time, I feel like there's something else going on, and our bodies are getting sensitive to the poisons. And you know what I mean?
100%. Like, there's even people that are like, they are so convinced that the reason we have so many children with like learning problems, with peanut or allergies, not even just peanut allergies, these are all contributing factors to the chemicals that we are stripping from our body consistently. Because that's the thing, it's not necessarily the chemical, it's the minerals and the vitamins that it actually then leaks from our body.
Depletes,
it completely just depletes that vitality.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Makes
it's...
sense. And I completely agree as well. Like, I always feel like whenever I speak about the diet thing, it's so controversial and people
It
get
is.
so like,
Yeah.
but I just think, it all depends. Like, there's, and there, yeah, I like what you said, bio-individual.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the thing, you can't be hard on ourselves, like, oh my God, I need to do this. And people they force it so hard. And it's like, really, you just have to listen to your body.
Yeah.
If you feel like you need to eat whatever, then eat it.
Yes, 100%.
And sometimes, like you said, the labels, they create this huge thing that's like becomes really restrictive. When actually
100%.
yeah, it's more like tuning into your
and also
eating.
just like really tune in with like, how is nature farming? How is nature moving? Because we are nature. So the more we pull ourselves away from nature, then the less healthy we are essentially going to be. So if you are to choose to eat animal products or whatever the case is, how has that animal lived its life?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that is a huge contributor, because again, it's not what you're eating, it's how it's grown and how you're then going to absorb that. And so
and have you seen this new thing here in the UK with I think it's called Borovali or something? They're trying to put it injecting it into cows' stomachs now because of the methane problem.
Oh, I did see a little
that?
bit of something, which is just...
This is like, wow. And like, how can you not think that's going to affect you when you eat it,
I think this is an example of we're not holistically thinking. This is a silo. This is like one expert who knows a lot about like gases and stomach and whatever is like, oh, I've got a solution for this. This is the solution, but has absolutely no idea on how it's all interconnected with the consumption of it then, and the nutrition of it then, and you know what I mean? So it just, this is where I think if we really want to find solutions to the polycrises that we find, we need to start thinking whole systems.
Totally, and like you said, it's disconnected from the whole thing. And a lot of the time, that's what science does.
It does. It's all about, it's reductionist science, actually. It's like reducing it down so that it's so precise and so exact. And I think science has a great foothold and has done like amazing things for us. And at the same time, when we are so like factuated on one sort of topic, or and we lose the bigger picture. So there's going to be this consistent being able to examine in, but then also zoom out and see and understand how
things works,
like interlink. 100%.
I remember reading this book now, and it was about like acidity, and I remember like the guy I can't remember now what it's called, but he was describing like fruits. So in an orange, it doesn't make sense to just take the vitamin out and then just it all works together. You need the water in there. You need the fiber. You need everything. Your body needs all of that. So I find that really interesting, because I think not many people think in that way.
No.
And like know this, and like who knows, maybe you might think it's not true, but like to me it makes so much sense. That's how it's been provided to us.
Exactly.
It's perfect.
Well, again, it comes back to saying, how can you absorb that? So if it's like just a compound in a tablet that you're taking,
yes, exactly. How can you absorb it?
You're just going to have like expensive pee. But if you've got the fiber, you've got the like the all the like the water again. Because I think I don't know a lot about this, but like apparently in fruits it's not H2O, it's H3O.
Structured living water.
Yes, exactly. So it's got something else in that, and that's what we need to be able to absorb these things.
Exactly. And I just found that so fascinating, because it's like they all complement each other.
They do. They do.
So what did you do when you were on your journey discovering all this stuff, and how food and diet and environment and everything's connected?
Well, so I started growing veggies. That was like the first sort of little thing. That's cool. Then it just became like a really like fun project. And then I started to realize, so in South Africa, the pandemic hit a lot of impoverished communities really hard. And there was a lot of like these food parcels being distributed. but then I was looking at the food parcels, and it's all like seed oils, it's
Yeah.
milli meal, it's like, you know, all of these
Yes.
foods that actually have zero nutrition.
Literally.
Like, I was just like, this cannot be, you know, like, how are we really moving forward? Like, okay, great, you know, there's a lot of those foods that can last long and will help, you know, fill people up, but it's not sustainable, actually, because then what happens, they become really unhealthy, then they need doctors, and then, you know, like, you've not actually really solved a problem, you've just kind of converted it into another problem for another department.
For another money-making scheme.
Exactly, another money-making scheme. So, yeah, then I was also super interested in, like, okay, how can we grow these food gardens? And yeah, I was also really fortunate enough to, like, do quite a bit of yoga during that time, and, like, really kind of just start connecting to what my body was telling me, how it was, like, growing and flowing. And like, from there I just deepened my knowledge and my understanding of food and health, and then from there as well started really then going to the places where people were doing these alternative community projects.
So you started finding it in love.
So then I went to these eco communities that were growing their own food, that were eating in community together, like really putting healing at the forefront of their lives.
And this is in South Africa?
This was in South Africa. And then it was just through that, like, deep, rich networking that I'd done in South Africa, I was like, well, obviously there's more places elsewhere. Like, I actually think I didn't start by going to a community in South Africa, but I don't know if you've heard of Oroville.
We were there earlier this year, literally.
Oh my gosh, okay. So I was watching a documentary on Oroville during COVID that I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like this.
They were ahead of their time.
The ideal, you know? Yeah. And then I found out about Findhorn, and then there's like
I've been to Findhorn as well.
Okay, that's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
But so there's the GEN network, so it's the Global Eco Village Network. And then they were doing loads of, like, free webinars and things during that time as well, when we were all stuck in our homes. And so, then I was like, okay, well, this is amazing. This is a global concept. There are so many people that are actually looking and finding and paving paths, you know.
Yeah.
And so, then I really got into, like, regenerative system thinking, you know, which is very linked to holistic sort of, like, health and well-being and all of that. But so for me, it's about regenerative design. Like, you know, permaculture is actually a design system. It's not just about food and growing. It's about, like, how we look at everything and how it interlinks, and how we can best adapt. Because again, with permaculture, one farm, certain systems and implementations will work, but then because you've moved to a different area that's got different, like, soil conditions, different like gradients of hills and this and the other, that system will not work. So it's really about looking at ecosystems and seeing, okay, how do the ecosystems speak together? How can we create ways for streamlines to happen in and amongst us? And then also seeing as our body is an ecosystem. You know, like, we're not just human. We are a walking ecosystem. And our microbiome is filled with critters in our gut, in our brain. You know, they've done research about, like, the microbiome in our brain, which they never thought would exist. They thought, you know, like, no microbial species would exist in the brain. They would eat it and da-da-da-da-da. And I think actually one of the biggest sort of things that we need to debunk in today's day and age is this idea that germs are bad.
Oh, dude, literally.
Like, honestly, don't stop putting sanitizer over everything.
Literally.
Stop, like, killing your microbiome on your hands, in your mouth. Like,
I know.
Stop it.
But even since 2020, it's crazy, but it's stuck.
Well, even before 2020, it actually happened when we started, like, advancing the medical system.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they were like, oh my gosh, people are dying, we're not sure why. And then that's when they started sterilizing the equipment.
Yes.
They were like, oh, sepsis, that's bacterial infection. So yes, some bacteria are bad, and we do need to not think that they're all yay and amazing. But at the same time, like we've got to start dipping back into diversifying our microbiomes. So if you eat a little bit of soil on your food, it's probably good for you.
Thing, yes.
Depending on where the soil, like how that food is grown. 100%. So yeah.
Another book I was reading, Kelly Brogan.
Okay.
She was talking about, apparently there's some studies that showed like the microbiome of like humans that existed, I don't know, thousands of years ago, so it was way more complex.
Yeah.
And that even some of the bacteria that was there, today we can't. So it just flips on the switch. It's like, hang on a minute, maybe it's not the bacteria, but it's like the way our body.
Ability to.
Yes. It's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And I mean, it makes so much sense as well, because like our ancestors were eating foods so much more diversified than what we find in the shops today.
True.
Like our main fruits really apples, pears, and bananas.
I know.
And oranges.
What is that about, honestly?
Do you know how many fruits live in this world?
Yeah.
You know, like, and we don't know like what half of them really are.
True.
You know. Yet it's become like so globalized actually what we get in the food market.
So true.
And I mean even just like the fact of like maize and you know these foods that have just been.
So I'd love to talk about this a little bit because you mentioned it, because I started to notice that as well. And again, this is something I was like, whoa, like the foods that we like all the bread and all the wheat and the pasta and. Like you said, so much of it literally doesn't contain anything.
Well, I mean, like, first thing, the wheat is like one of the most. Like,
I'm so happy we're having this conversation. I didn't realise it was going to go in this direction, you know?
Yeah, no, we going down the health and the well-being of the foods, because
So the wheat?
The wheat, it's most sprayed with glyphosate.
Yes.
So like it's toxic. And most people are not actually gluten intolerant.
Yeah.
Gluten is not the enemy.
Yes.
The enemy is the glyphosate that's been sprayed on that
I did hear about this.
You know, like, because, I mean, gluten's in a lot of foods. It's protein. That's what, like, gluten actually is. It's like this gluey, sticky substance. And so if you don't have, like, again, the ability to digest because you don't have the right microbiome, because your microbiome is stripped, because you've taken antibiotics, because you've, you know, eaten all these pesticides and all of these like harmful chemicals, then you are going to struggle with leaky gut, and you are going to struggle with you know, like all of these other conditions, and it's then really difficult to deal with because it's not an overnight. Just remove it out.
Yeah, it's not.
It's actually repairing the gut.
Well, this is the thing.
gut lining, you know?
Because this is the thing that I feel like, you know, people. I overheard someone the other day saying, you know, if you eat really healthy, you better be living forever. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. No. We have been poisoned. We need to detox. We need to heal. There's so much to it, and I feel like if you seem to be doing things really, really good, and then something happens, it's like, oh well, look, that didn't work. And it's like, it doesn't work like that, you know?
No.
Like this, and there's so many intricate other things to consider.
Yes.
Like, you're saying, you know? Yeah,
no, exactly. And that's the thing is, like, again, there's not one size fits all.
Yes.
When it comes to diet.
It's so interesting, and also another thing I did hear as well is that the gluten in the wheat is way more than it used to be as well back in the day, which is so interesting.
Well, again, because it's quite a GMO food, I think, you know, so it's like.
But what, you know,
it's the baddest.
Yeah, it is. But it's fascinating because when you just see the traditional diet, there's so much just like non-substance, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
100%.
And it's amazing that you decided to grow your own, because that's what they all say, right?
But again, like, you know, it's so interesting because the deeper I went down the path, and the more I realized that, okay, great, you decide to grow your own food, go to the shops, buy the seeds. Who's actually supplying the seeds? Monsanto, which is part of Big Ag, which is GMO, which is also, again, only supplying a limited amount of foods.
Yes.
And some of those foods don't even really come from, like, the country that you've maybe growing the food in.
Yeah.
So we've now lost all this knowledge and all this
diversity.
Healing, diversity, the microbiome for the soil, the microbiome for our guts, in the location and the areas that we are living within, you know. And that's why I think Indigenous culture is really important to keep alive.
True. Wow.
That information is because you know they have direct connection to what is most relevant in that ecosystem.
You know what? I feel like Avatar's coming to me because you know in the Avatar film it's like they're just coming in with that technology, and I feel like the other day I had that like this vision. The world was indigenous. Everywhere was indigenous at one point.
Yeah.
And look what's happened. Like it's wild. The beast came in and like and now we're repairing. Like you know.
Yes. Well, see, I think this is what has been like the most rewarding about the journey that I've been on. It's not been like, okay, let's drown in all this information of how screwed up this world is.
Because you can fall into
that. My goodness, it's so depressing. Like, you know, like it just never ends, and then there's like another scandal and this, and you just find out more and more and more.
So true.
But my journey has been about connecting to the communities, the people that are like, we are not having this as our standard, as our base zero. We are looking, we are paving, we are pioneering, we are returning back to and reweaving.
I love that.
And so that's where I think community can be really, really powerful, and especially ones that are resilient to differences, ones that are open to having differences of opinion. Because a community that's all like saying yes to everything with each other is also not a healthy community. It's a cult. You know what I mean? Like you've really got to have some sort of contestation, exactly, a little bit of critical thinking, a little bit of debate. It's healthy. And so I
feel like I'm wondering as well with your journey, did you notice, because I personally think that food is such a big part, because when I stopped eating meat as well, like everything changed, like just everything shifted. So how was it, like, it sounds like this was kind of like your entry into the connection and back to nature really, but did that affect you psychologically as well, and like you know, like the evolution and transformation?
Definitely. I mean, look, I'm still not perfect, and I still think there's so much like room for improvement with my own diet and choices and all of the rest. So let me not, you know, like, it's one thing to know something and it's another thing to embody it.
Yes.
And so that's where like the embodiment journey is still deepening in my own process. And so I think food is the beginning and is the end, you know, like, and especially like I just love what your friend said, you know, like colonization happens in the colon, because it very much does.
Right. And that's what happened. They came over with the plantation, with the peanuts, with the, you know.
Well, I think it's just the way that we think now as well. Because, you know, like if we start reducing down who is they?
Who is they?
Who is they?
I love that question.
And because they can also be my mom saying, well, I'm not buying organic food because it's more expensive, or like, you know what I mean, like, oh, this is just the more convenient to buy veggies that are pre-chopped and cook them, you know. So it's more than just, I think, a they. It's a group thing.
It's like a psychological waveform, you know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like even just unpicking that within your own learning, you know, like unlearning as a way to progress and heal, and you know, and that's where again, like, I mean, as I said, like, I'm definitely not perfect with all my food choices, and I think that's also the other exciting part as well, is, you know, this journey doesn't just end and you're not just perfect, like you consistently learning new things and discovering new foods and like trying new things, and you know, maybe we do tend to like work in a little bit of fad cycles as well, that everyone's like, oh my gosh, we all need to be having olive oil, and then it's like, shungite, put the shungite in the water, like, okay, now we need to be eating reishi, and like, you know, like, and yes, of course, these things are all great and so helpful for health and well-being, but they're they're not the end
Yeah, the be all
answer,
end.
and that is where it often gets framed. It's
That's
like,
so
you know,
true.
this is the answer. This is going to solve all of our health crises.
Totally, and you're right. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And I think one of my friends, he was always really deep into the food thing, and it was a big support for me. And he always said like, it's a journey.
100%. And for me, I think, you know, where I started with like being really sort of like high anxiety, a lot of depression. That is not the case for me now. You know, like I am vital, I am healthy. You know, the amount of caffeine I drink is little to nothing. I'm pretty much, you know, like able to have a lot of energy and be really like happy, and I mean not just happy, because obviously like there's moments where I'm sad, but I'm able to feel those emotions and not get stuck in them and not like ruminate in them, you know. Because I think that's ultimately what actually lives it gives your life meaning, gives your life purpose, gives your life richness. It's the quality of life. It's not the quantity, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, I mean, I noticed it myself from previously as well, is you just wallow in this, oh, poor me, you know, but then it's like, how do you get out of that? And when you can get out of it, like you said, you don't get stuck, you can move through it.
Yes.
So, and I'm wondering, were there any other things? Because it sounds like you're changing the food thing was a big part of it, but were there other things that helped you, and like things that just came onto your path that...
So I mean, psilocybin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, psilocybin I think was like a huge catalyst in my thinking. Yeah, it's a teacher. And yeah, I mean, again, going back to community, I think being able to really start authentically expressing myself, you know, when the days where I was like apologizing for crying, like that was like probably one of the worst things, was seeing like anyone seeing me as weak or as like, you know, I don't know what, like in my mind it was like, I cannot be seen crying because then I'm going to be weak and I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that, and I just had to kind of mask myself a little bit and like shape shift to like fit a situation. And coming then into communities where like it was completely okay to be a little bit down, or to be a little bit of emotional, like I don't know, tidal wave of tears or whatever the worst case scenario in my mind was, started to like break through of like, oh, actually this is not so bad, you're still accepted for who you are.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean? Like, even if you disagree with someone or you have an argument or whatever, it's like learning the ways to start communicating. So then like my actual connection to humans also then really deepened, and you know, like coming to like events and being completely sober, like that is just so much fun for me, because the heart field remains. You know, if you go a night out or you go to a festival and there's alcohol, you can have great connections with people on the dance floor, and you're like, you know, hey, whatever, but then the next day they almost like don't want to look you in the eye, or you know, it drops
totally
so quickly. And it, like to me that is the most bizarre. Exactly. It's just bizarre. Like it's like almost like, oh my gosh, like was I really doing that, or what? I don't even know what goes through their mind. But it literally like there's like a switch.
It's a switch. It's literally a switch.
And like when you at a sober event, you don't have that. Oh, you know, people just keep into this like heart open space.
And like it, as you're saying.
Exactly. It's so infectious. It's so like just like lovely in all the ways. And then like dancing and watching other people find their expression, like having more confidence to find yours. Singing has been a huge part of the journey of healing and like really like coming to own who I am, you know. I think I'm still working so much through the voice, but that I think is part of my like my true calling in this lifetime is communication. Both like written, verbal, singing, like just that throat chakra goodness. And so I think again as a woman, even, you know, there's a lot of repression that has to break through with all of that.
100%.
So
wow.
But I would definitely say that the food is, I think for me, the most important, because you can look at it from so many different angles. I mean, even when I was in COVID, one of the big drives of like becoming more connected to how we grow food was like, we need to find a solution to help others to start growing their food, so they're not reliant on seed oils and foods that are actually
farmer and agri,
like damaging their health more than helping their health, you know? And like, no one owns the air, no one owns the sun, the water, like, you know what I mean? Like, those things are part of the commons. And I think that's where we can start reclaiming a lot of our sovereignty and our power back. And yes. So that's where food for me is. It's at the core of everything else that we need to then start with our healing journey.
Oh, I love that. And that's so true, because that conversation starts with colon is exactly it.
Yes, it is. It's literally it.
I love it. Thank you. I love what you shared. And also just, I just love that you said in community. It was really helpful. And I've experienced that as well, because it's so interesting, because this disconnection is like this disease, and especially in London, it's a very individualistic society, and you know, India as a whole is very different, and even like the farming over there is different. Like organic means organic, you know, it's a whole different thing there. But and the community, so you know, I was in India for quite a bit of this year, and the community is so strong, and just in the interpersonal relationships, just, you know, being able to navigate difficult conversations the way you might be, but like, and then just be okay afterwards. Like, I experienced that so much there, like, and just be accepted in who you are. I just think it's so amazing, and I love that, because I just feel like, we're healing in community. And like you said at the beginning, it's because it's holistic. We're not separate.
No.
We're going back to the interconnection of the tribe, of the community, of, you know.
100%. Because I mean, even just our communities of organisms that are on our bodies, you know, like there's so much that we are in connection with, and can be our teachers, essentially, you know. So when we're open to that reciprocity of learning from one another, and it's not like, I am the teacher, I know more than you, then that's when, like, oh, flip, you know, that's, I think, where community is now becoming such an important factor in our dynamics with one another.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the thinking in general is putting these experts on pedestals.
Exactly.
And it doesn't work like that.
No, it's not helpful.
It's not helpful, right?
Like, to our own minds and to them as well, you know, because you almost then dehumanize them when they're on such a high pedestal. Like, do you give them room to make mistakes and to be wrong, and, you know, all of the rest? So yeah,
because one of my friends was saying that the other day, like, when it comes to politics, but anyway, just like thinking that this person needs to be absolutely perfect, but like, no one is.
No, and you know, this is even like where, like, I think my big learning is happening too. It's just feeling like, oh my gosh, can I even really speak about a lot of this stuff? Like, because do I have enough expertise? Like, you know, like, am I the picture perfect sort of poster of health and well-being, or whatever the case is, you know? And that's where I think can really be limited of our potential. Like, do we actually put ourselves out there?
And it's just, I mean, I experienced that when I started this project years ago as well, but it's just another transformational portal to walk through, you know, because you can see it as like, oh, maybe, I'm just going to stay here, or you can be like, no, boom, blast through it, you know?
Exactly. And then really realize how many, like, your wings will catch you, you know what I mean? Like, something greater starts to catch you. It's like taking that
Yes. So I just want to ask, so mainly with the food thing, are you more concerned about just where it's coming from?
Well,
like now?
Yeah, like to an extent, where it's coming from, but then also how am I eating my food? Again, like, that is so important. Like, what kind of state of mind am I in? You know, am I, like, you know, one thing that I've struggled with is, like, emotional eating. It's like one of my greatest coping mechanisms, like, turn to some really tasty food and, like, you know, fill a hole or like attempt to fill a hole, thinking that would be the answer. And it's like, in those moments of consumption, I'm not, like, mindfully consuming. And so if I can come to a meal, I can give it praise, I can, like, really thank it, and I can bring it into my cells in, like, a grateful, like, wholesome way, I think that can sometimes be a little bit more important than, is it organic, is it this, is it that, you know what I mean? Like,
I love
you
that.
can eat food from like a grocery store or like, you know, like a common place, but maybe isn't the most ethical, this, that, the other, because sometimes convenience is also like needed.
Yeah.
Then like, as long as you can just
bring the intention.
Yes, exactly, and really connect with like, okay, I'm grateful for this food, I'm grateful for nourishment, and
I love that.
you know, also like, yeah, like who are you eating your food with, like who are you preparing it with, like, you know, I definitely know I enjoy my food so much more when I get to share it with people than if I like just am cooking for myself all the time. You know, like I still cook bomb for myself because I love to cook.
Same.
But like there's just something that I like, there's just a little extra satisfaction that comes when like you are all sharing a meal together, and it's
And are there any things that you avoid?
Things that I avoid, so seed oils, things that are very inflammatory. I think that's what I like really try and avoid. And yeah, I like completely just being honest right now, like I definitely don't love sugar, but have been on a little bit of a sugar moment. Yes, you know, like, because this is the problem as well, is food is so addictive, you know, that we designed it to be addictive. And so yeah, that's where like, you know, lots of learning and embodiment sort of really needs to come into place, because like I know that I shouldn't be having these things, but am I actually doing them? Maybe not. You know,
this is why I feel like it's such a journey, because for me it's taken years sometimes to get up, to stop, to actually be like, to get to the place where my body doesn't even want it, you know?
100%. Well, yeah, so I mean, that's a big thing for me. Like right now, I'm thinking about like nervous system nourishment. So like caffeine, it's a dysregulator, you know? And yeah, like sugar, obviously not great, so stay away from it. And like other foods that I really kind of avoid. I'm not someone to like completely avoid and like look at food and be like, absolutely not. I'm like pretty much open. Like, so I do eat animal products, and I do try and like be conscious with how that animal has come into this life and formed and that kind of thing. And I've also like, I like to call myself a reducitarian. So I've reduced the amount that I eat considerably, and like I can go for weeks, you know, without any kind of meat or anything like that. And only when my body's like, okay, I really feel like I want a little bit of meat, or, you know, whatever the case is, and I'm like, okay, cool, let's source that, you know. So I've definitely reduced the amount of like animal products for sure. Like I think even dairy is like a huge trigger for me. Like it's definitely some sort of lactose intolerance there. And so.
And then what about like with the wheat, and are you chilled on that one?
So funnily enough, like when I first started my healing journey, like when I was like really anxiety and depressed and blah 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 blah, and I've healed my gut since then. I can tolerate gluten, and it's not a trigger for me. And at the same time, I don't eat a lot of it.
Yes, it's
not something that like makes me like go yay. You know, so
that's what I find so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, also my parents and I, we did banting, which I don't know if that was a big thing in the UK, but it's very similar to paleo.
I remember in South Africa,
Yeah, so paleo is like high fat, high sort of like protein diet, removing carbohydrates quite a lot. And so even just from that, like, I mean, I love potatoes, I love even rice, I eat rice, and like those kinds of things that don't actually have gluten in them. So for me, it's kind of easy to kind of dodge gluten, because sometimes, like, especially if I have like a pizza, like I can feel my stomach's a bit like, oof, didn't like that, or you know, whatever the case is. So it's just about like being conscious with that, and maybe trying to find like stone ground wheat, or like a better source for that.
I feel like for me it's similar. Like before it was really, really bad. Now I can tolerate way more, and every now and then I will have some pizza, usually sourdough.
Exactly. Yes.
And then-
Oh, I love sourdough pizza.
And then it's okay, but then sometimes it's also maybe a bit like, yeah. And I would prefer not to.
Yes,
It's
100%.
interesting how that happens. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, thank you so much. I think so much knowledge, and I feel like yeah, I'd love to see you speaking more on all of these things, you know. And yeah, I just wondered if we can end with, you know, just like what is your vision for the future with regards to this specific topic, and how do you see it playing out, and maybe like how you would like to your role within that if you see one.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I would love to help people become more sovereign, you know. I think that's where it ultimately comes down to, because it's not just about like what you're eating and your health in that respect, but it's also about how you feel about yourself, you know, like, are you fully embodied? Are you able to authentically express yourself? Are you able to critically think, engage, and like streamline the things that you are most passionate about? And so I would definitely love to be sharing more with audiences, speaking like on stages, perhaps writing a book one day. You know, like, I think teaching has been like a calling that I've had, but I just don't love the education system, and it's not something that I see myself doing full time. Exactly. So it's like, okay, how can I almost pioneer something that's going to fit all of those boxes? And I feel like the last couple of years, like going into these communities, doing these events, it's also something that I absolutely love. I love being around people. I love creating spaces that are heart-filled, you know. And so the mind and like the wisdom and the knowledge is really, really important. But again, like the same with our gut, it's not what you consume, it's what you absorb. It's the same with the knowledge, you know, like you're not in the space to actually like receive. And that's where I think, you know, experiences are the greatest way for us to learn.
Yes, totally.
And to move forward. And so, perhaps I'll be doing a little like cooking class demonstration or something one day, and you know, we can then really talk about the health benefits, get to enjoy the food together as well, and really create like these holistic experiences.
Oh, I love this. I love it. I just love that when you speak about it, it is so holistic. Like you said, it's literally not just about this, you know, what's inside the food, the specific elements that are there, you know. It's there's so much more to it.
Yes. And
I just want to backtrack because I just loved as well what you said about the, you know, the intention and the gratitude, because we started doing that as well, like just being thank you every time before we eat, and then you set the tone. And also this Ayurvedic doctor we saw in Goa, he told us some funny story that, you know, whenever he eats, he takes it very seriously. Like if someone interrupts him, he won't, you know, he's like, don't talk to me, I'm very busy, I'm eating, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because again, it's like when you become really in tune with the senses, like you activate certain compounds, certain hormonal sort of reactions with your body, so you can actually digest that food, you know, in a way that you're like welcoming it in. And if you're distracted and doing it, then it can take away from that process.
And he also says something like 60, when you've eaten 60% of the meal, don't talk, only after that. Interesting.
I like that.
And then can I ask you two more?
Okay. I'm feeling a little bit pressure of time, but you know, I only have a catch fly. Yes.
So, how do you see like the thanks for sharing like your specific role, like just in general, like the movement of people and this shift that's going on with regards to like food. How do you see that playing out, or how do you want it to?
Well, I think localization, regenerative sort of systems, you know, like really again reclaiming back the foods that we've lost in our areas. Like, to me, I find it so bizarre, like the amount of blackberries I was munching on this whole summer in the UK, because they grow in so many hedgerows and, you know, just growing everywhere wild. And you go to the shops and they've got like blackberries imported from Spain, or like, you know, like they cost, I don't know, like £3 a punnet, and it's like, what? We have food like literally growing on our doorsteps. You know, like, what are we doing with yarrow? What are we doing with like all these, like, you know, so foraging, I think, is definitely becoming a little bit more trendy.
It totally
there's
is.
also like there's so much benefit to it
Yes.
as well. You know, like
Obviously.
what are we surrounded by exactly? What are we surrounded by? How can we use that for our health and well-being? So I'd love to see a little bit more of that, but then also systems that are a little bit more regenerative, moving our like monocrop farms to like
fruit farms.
well, just they need to create like more of a polychrome. I don't even know. Poly. I don't know if that's a word. Made that up. But you know, systems like permaculture and regenerative agriculture put those systems in place. You know, where there's companion planting, we're thinking more about the soil.
Yes, more diverse.
Exactly. They're not just like bleaching the soil and like stripping it of all of its nutrients and then like completely drowning in fertilizers, and becoming a little bit more friendly with the pests that we have, finding ways that we can control those pests a little bit easier. You know, like I 100% believe the reason we have like all these locust swarms and plagues and all sorts of things where like there's just an abundance of bugs that attack crops all at once is because of monocropping. You know what I mean? So if we could start like breaking down some of those farms that are just growing one thing and diversifying them, I think we'll do a great deal for the soil, we'll do a great deal for our health, and for the food system, you know. Instead of exporting and importing all of these foods from all over the world, how can we celebrate the diversity and the wisdom that grows in the lands that we are occupying?
Love it. Amazing vision. Hopefully there will be. I think there will.
I mean, look, it's going that way. As I said, like, you know, the more you turn your attention towards the communities and the people that are doing that, the more it starts to expand.
So true.
So
So, and then the final question I love to ask people is, what does freedom mean to you?
What does freedom mean to me? Wow.
I know, big one.
Do we have another hour? Freedom. Freedom means to me that like I can enjoy life without like too much worry, too much like stress about the people, the places, the things that I'm kind of like doing. Freedom is also like being able to just get up and go and do something. You know, like I think it's like the burdens of certain things that, you know, like to have a job and this and that and the other, and like, you know, pay all these bills. Freedom would just be like, okay, I don't have to worry about any of that. I can actually contribute and put my energy towards things that like bring me joy, or like paving a path that's profound. You know, like I don't want to just do nothing. Definitely feel like there's still a drive to make a difference in the world, but I don't want to have to just do it so that I can put a roof over my head and you know, like get to pay my bills and that kind of thing. So I don't know, I think freedom is a feeling for sure, and I think it's one where you feel light, where you feel just like you are being pulled by the rivers of abundance in all ways.
Wow, I love that.
Like just a really rich experience in like, you know, just material, but like the soul nourishing richness of being connected and connected to the people that bring light.
Love that. Thank you. I feel like that matrix job thing is also something that we're all trying to figure out, you know.
100%. Because that's the thing, is like it also like it's nice to have money. It's nice to be able to you know, do things.
But we're covering a different
100%, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. You know, I think it's one of the biggest myths.
Yes,
it's like we consistently divide ourselves. Are you Democrat or are you Labour? This and that. It's like, well, like, you know, can you be somewhere in between? Can you you know, be finding something that blends?
And like you said, the abundance threads and
Yes, exactly.
Amazing.
100%.
Yay. Thank you. Oh, such an amazing conversation.
Yes, really soul nourishing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your beautiful questions.
Oh.
And thank you to Anne Sol for this beautiful studio.
I feel like this is the first podcast in the studio.
Oh my gosh, we've christened it.
Yes. Amazing.
Yes.
Have a safe flight back home.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode and to this podcast. We hope that you can gain many insights through the art of listening. If you haven't already, we would love it if you can follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if that feels right for you. We've also just launched our first online course, Awakening 101, a ninja's guide to navigating a spiritual awakening, which is led by me and is offered via donation. So if you feel called to that, then please dive in. It's available via our website. Thank you.